So our development team includes, and the folks that will be presenting tonight, Elizabeth Heyer, who's the Chief of Real Estate at Two Life Communities, Patricia Gruitz, who's the Principal Architect at Mass Design Group, and Bob Wakefield, who's the CEO of Element Care. Also, I believe on the call representing the Ward 1 neighbors is City Councilor Wayne Losey. So tonight we will be presenting two distinct proposals, one for the hospital property that fronts on at 500 Linfield Street, and one for the parking lot on Woodland Avenue. These proposals are keeping with the recommendations reached by the Metropolitan Area Planning Council after conducting an extensive study that was paid for by the hospital and insisted on by Councilor Losey, and it included several neighborhood meetings. As we move forward with this meeting, you may submit questions or comments by typing them into the chat function, or you may raise your hand and Rose will invite you to speak to the group once we complete our presentation. Either way, we are here to answer your questions and address your concerns. I hope you've been able to view our proposed plans on our Union 2021 website. We will be explaining those plans tonight. I'd like to begin by updating everyone about where we are and what is happening at the hospital property. The original hospital property consisted of approximately 20 acres, with 10.5 acres containing the hospital and the medical offices that fronted on Linfield Street, and 9.5 acres on Woodland Ave containing the staff and overflow parking lot. So North Shore Medical Center, which is now called Mass General Brigham, which formerly was Partners Healthcare, retained 5 acres with a new urgent care and medical office building that opened in August sits. The recent demolition of the old West Medical building that was attached to the main hospital was on the parcel retained by Mass General Brigham. The ongoing construction to complete the parking lot behind the new medical building is being managed by the medical center and is not part of our project. I am told that they hope to have the parking lot completed by the end of December. So I took title to the 5.5 acres containing the closed Union Hospital, as well as the 9.5 acre parking lot on Woodland Ave on August 31st. But we allowed the hospital property to be used by Mass General Brigham into the beginning of October. Once the building was vacated, we started the process of planning the demolition of the main hospital building. We did determine that the only portion of the hospital that was worth saving was the south building, which is to the rear of the property that's closest to Woodland North. And it will be used by Element Care for its PACE program. We also have completed an environmental study that outlines the need for asbestos abatement in the hospital buildings before actual demolition can take place. We are currently awaiting bids for this work and hope to start abatement in mid-December. It's likely that the building demolition would not start until late winter, early spring of next year. So in the meantime, we are allowing the Lynn Fire and police departments, along with other law enforcement agencies, to use the vacant buildings for technical training. Actually, the Boston FBI SWAT team, which trained there last month, will be training in the building next week. So they'll be there for a couple of days next week. Tonight's meeting is really the first step in the development process that will require a number of city approvals before construction can take place. I'd like to start by explaining my proposal for the development of the 9.5 acre parking lot parcel off Woodland North. Folks, can you display the Woodland site plan? See if the technical folks can get that plan up, but it is on, and the site plan is on our website, and it's easy to download and expand and so forth. So what I am proposing on the parking lot is 28 single family homes as a cluster development that I'm calling Woodland Village. The homes would be age restricted, with the primary owners required to be age 55 or older. By designing a cluster rather than a standard single-family subdivision, I was able to maximize open space and allow a natural buffer zone to remain between the homes and the existing neighbors that abut the property. So those neighbors that are on Woodland North, there'd be a buffer of about 20 feet, 30 feet of mature trees that would stay behind those properties. Quite a bit of the houses along Dartmouth Street would have open space behind them. And the homes that are on Mary Ellen Drive, their back property lines, there would be a 30-foot strip of natural wooded area that would be left in its natural state. And on the other side of things, with the age restriction, there'd be little, if any, impact on our schools. So each owner would be responsible for the maintenance of their own homes, but all the landscaping and snow removal would be handled by a homeowners association with covenants that restrict those areas that are going to be left natural. I've actually modeled this proposal after Nels Pond Village, which is between Emerald Drive and Judge Road, a short distance away. So we're going to pull up the building plans now. This is a representative building plan. The front elevation would show that we have a two-car garage coming in and 1 or 2 steps into the house. So you're looking at a proposed building plan. Each home would be easily adapted to handicapped access if needed. Going to the main floor plan, it's designed for single floor living with a master bedroom suite, including the master bath, a guest lab along with laundry facility, a kitchen, dining room, and living room. And the living room would open up into a rear outdoor deck on the back of the property. The second floor plan would consist of a second bedroom, and we can flip to the second floor there, would have a second bedroom along with a full bath, a loft area along with a hobby area and some storage. The owners would have the flexibility of either using the first or the second floor bedrooms as a master bedroom, with the other bedroom could be a guest suite or an office or a den. In the basement plan, the full basement would contain a utility room as well as additional space for storage or optional finished space. The finished floor space for the basic home would be about 2,175 square feet. So it's a fairly good sized home, but it is a 2-bedroom home. I'd like to shift to the 500 Lintfield Street site where the former Union Hospital sits. One of the things I wanted to point out is in the next year or so, I'll be the person managing the demolition of the old hospital. Once the demolition is complete, then I will be handing the property over to the Two Life Communities to build, manage, and own the project. The folks at Two Life Communities are experts in the field of building and managing affordable senior housing. And as mentioned earlier, also partnering on the project is Element Care, which manages the PACE program for elders. I would now like to ask Elizabeth Heyer to tell us about Two Life Communities and to explain the proposal for the Union site. Elizabeth?
Wonderful. Thank you, Dave. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Great. Okay. So Two Life Communities is a not-for-profit organization that welcomes seniors from all backgrounds and enables what we like to call aging in community through communities of engagement, connection, purpose, and joy. And we do this by providing superior quality housing that is broadly affordable, continually evolving the support services we provide to meet the needs of our diverse residents as they age, building connections and community within our walls and in our surrounding neighborhoods, and promoting aging in community as a first choice. Two Life Communities provides extensive services for the over 1,700 low and moderate income older adults who live with us in our communities in Boston, Framingham, Newton, and Brookline. We are extremely excited to expand our impact in Lynn by proposing a housing community that will be for older adults in Lynn, both through our commitment to a 70% local preference and by seeking a range of local and state subsidies that will help to make the rent broadly affordable and accessible to older adults in Lynn. Two Life deeply appreciates Dave Solimine for making Two Life's participation in this project possible. He is a true partner in every sense of the word and has been extraordinarily helpful in guiding our work so the project best serves your community, which we know he knows so well. We also appreciate the opportunity to hear from you tonight as we begin to formulate our development plan. Our neighbors are our most important partners. We not only develop housing, but as Dave said, we own and operate that housing and provide all the services in the communities that we manage. So we will be committed to the community in Lynn for the long term, and that means being committed to you as our neighbors. So your early and ongoing feedback will help us create a development plan that will work best for you and for your community. Tonight, we want to get your feedback on our early conceptual plan for the project. But before we do that, I want to spend a few minutes introducing you to Two Life and our aging and community approach. Who lives with us and how we support them is our top priority. Two Life provides what the industry typically calls independent living, which is different than assisted living, and it's different than a CCRC or a community, continuing care retirement community. And we would argue that independent living is even better because we have endless flexibility to be creative in the ways we coordinate our residents' access to care and services. And while we are technically independent living, going it alone is lonely and it's expensive. It's all about community for us at Two Life. We believe that aging is a team sport, and Two Life's approach to housing and services means that most of our residents will be able to live their entire lives with us and in their apartments, rather than moving to a higher level of care or going to a nursing home. And this is not what anybody wants. And with the right home-based services, it's also not what most people need. We don't have receptionists at Two Life. We have front desk ambassadors who partner with our resident volunteers. We have a huge range of events every week, everything from English Conversation Club and a tech support club to music performances and resale shop hours, and everything is posted in at least 3 languages, languages that are always in service of the people who live with us. Gardening, exercise classes, and intergenerational programs are some of our most popular. Aging in community means that at 5:45 on a Tuesday, on a night where no formal program is organized, residents are still gathered with their friends and family. We always try to create comfortable common spaces that enable this type of spontaneous activity. Whether it's pool or ping pong, the matches can get a little fierce, and our residents aren't afraid to win against their grandkids or even our staff. Monthly dance parties are a great time to be silly, meet your neighbors, meet the staff, as well as volunteers from the outside community, and also community members who come in to join our activities, because all are welcome. And of course, we're always thrilled to welcome VIP visitors to join our celebrations. Staff in our gyms are encouraging and helpful with adapting exercises to each resident's abilities and goals. And we not only provide beautiful gardens and outdoor fitness spaces, but we come together to celebrate and try activities together whenever we can. Two Life partners with premier healthcare partners such as Element Care, who is here tonight to answer your questions. And this gives us the ability to make sure that our residents receive convenient on-site care. Care coordination means residents get the right care at the right time. And the result is that the average age of Two Life's residents is 81, but we have several people who live with us that top 100 years old. The median household income of our residents living in our subsidized units is around $10,000 to $11,000 a year, but incomes are higher for our middle income units. And each of our communities has live-in staff who respond to emergencies overnight. The result is that we resolve 92% of pull cords. That's the emergency cord you can pull in your apartment if you need help. And we resolve 92% of those in-house instead of calling 911, which means we're keeping people out of emergency rooms unnecessarily. At least 30% of people who live with us are deemed nursing home eligible at any given time, But because of our care coordination and our on-site services, our residents continue to age in community and avoid these unnecessary ER visits and hospital stays, and avoid moves to a nursing home unnecessarily. In fact, only 2% of our residents move to higher levels of care in any given year. And those who do move out for higher levels of care at an average age of 89 years old, which is about 9 years longer than you find in most other independent housing communities. And that's because of our deep and extensive services. Resident satisfaction surveys that we've conducted with our residents tell this story perhaps best. And the number 1, 2, and 3 results from those surveys are that, number one, people love that staff know them and their families. Our residents feel safe, and our residents report never being lonely. So we are really excited to bring this aging in community model to Lynn on the site in your community. Because the design for our Union Hospital community is just conceptual at this phase, we thought we'd share a couple of images from projects that we've recently completed or ones that are underway, so you can get a sense of the quality that we build and the attention to detail that we bring to our projects. This is our Weinberg House, which was completed in 2018, and it's 61 affordable apartments in the Brighton community of Boston. And these are some interior spaces in Weinberg House. We invite community members in to take part in all of our programs and services. So we design our ground floors and our community spaces to be like village centers so that everybody feels welcome, our residents and our neighbors. This is a picture of Brown Family House, which we just opened. This picture was when it was about 90% through construction. So you can see that the ground floor still needs some finish work, but this is 62 new affordable apartments in the Coolidge Corner neighborhood of Brookline. And you can see on the next slide, the interiors and the garden spaces of Brown Family House. We have a real commitment to beautiful indoor and landscaped outdoor spaces so that people feel welcome and enjoy gathering in beautiful spaces to create the kind of community engagement that we value so highly. The next slide shows you a project that we're just about to start construction on. This is an expansion of a community that already has 200 apartments in Newton. We're adding another 68 affordable apartments in these 2 upper and lower additions. And we've designed these additions to stay within kind of the height of the trees and to be very contextual in the residential neighborhood where they're located. And then the final image that I wanted to show you is another project that we're about to start construction on, also in early 2021. This is our J.J. Carroll project in Brighton. And J.J. Carroll is particularly interesting tonight, I think, because it has a similar size and a similar program to what we're proposing for the Union Hospital site. This project also includes a PACE center with our partner Element Care, who will also be on site with us in Lynn. And Element Care will provide services to our residents in the Brighton community and residents living in our building. So it's a program that is open to all. You can see from these images that we have a commitment to building beautiful open space, and this project has a wonderful public plaza with an intergenerational play area that people in the neighborhood will also be invited to use. And before I hand this off to Patricia from Mass Design Group, our architects, who will be describing the project in greater detail, I did want to highlight that we really appreciate the work that came before us, that MAPC led in cooperation with North Shore Medical Center and the City of Lynn. It really created a wonderful roadmap for what is possible and what would be contextual on this site. And I would imagine that many of you on the call tonight participated in that community process. So hopefully what you're about to see resonates with what you asked for. We really did try to take our cues from that important work that came before Two Life's participation in the project. So with that, I'll thank you so much for attending tonight, for your attention, and really happy to introduce you to Patricia, who is going to take you through the early conceptual designs for our project.
Hey everyone, I'm Patricia. Thanks Elizabeth for the introduction. What you're looking at here on the screen right now is the conceptual early site plan, which is on the website as well. So for those of you that have been on the website, hopefully this looks familiar. Just to orient you, for those of you that are seeing this for the first time, this is the site off of Linfield Street. So thank you for you can follow kind of the arrow there of Linfield to what we would call sort of the northeast of the site. And then down to the other side of the page is Woodland Avenue. So those are the bounding streets there, with also Dartmouth Street towards the top of the page. What you'll notice, the rectangle towards the east of the site called NSMC, that's the North Shore Medical Center. So just to orient you to the sort of bounds of the property that's being developed, it's what's here and sort of rendered in this image. So one of the great things about working with 2 Life is their mission around living in community and really finding ways for seniors to live in community. And we really are seeking with them to find a way that the design can reflect that scale of community, which can be productive and healthy and provide residents with a really wonderful experience in their housing environment. And so this proposal looks at a series of houses in what we're calling in phase 1, which will provide 150 affordable senior housing units. We're additionally suggesting at this point a phase 2, which would add another 55 units, which would be something which would be under a special permit and would open up an additional process outside of this current zoning process. And that would involve additional community review down the road. And so we're just opening that up in terms of our planning to ensure that as we think about the development of this site, we're being thoughtful about how to use the space that has been given to us for development. So just to give you a project summary, for zoning designation, we will be seeking, as was guided by the MAUC report, an MVOD, which is a medical village overlay district for zoning. Phase 1 will have 150 units, phase 2 a proposed 55 at a later date. Additionally, in that development will be 15,000 square feet of resident programming, which 2 Life calls their village center, and houses all of the wonderful programs and common spaces that Lisbeth referenced to, as well as a 3,000 square foot cafe and a 5,000 square foot public plaza off of Linfield Street. So adding some more green space right off of Linfield Street, adjacent to the existing bus stop. The development, as you see the sort of new buildings, sorry, if you go back one actually, Rose, sorry. The new buildings that you see there, new building A, new building B, new building C, the intent here to support community is really focused on the scale of the development and how we can internally support residents in finding community and also externally reflect the scale and context of the surrounding neighborhood. So our current design strategy is to create a series of houses with a resident program space in each. Those houses are then connected around a central open courtyard in phase 1, and that additional house would be added and complete the courtyard in that possible phase 2. So if you go to the next slide. So in addition to that ground floor programming, we are looking at locating and making best use of the buildings that are already on site. So the existing south building, we are proposing to be used as the PACE program. You can see here how it's located in its current condition of about 25,000 square feet. Additionally, on the next slide, one of the things that we're being mindful of in the development of this project is of the neighbors in the abutting houses, properties on Dartmouth Street. In addition to stepping down the residential houses along Dartmouth side of the street, a story, we're sort of dropping the entire development down a story. We're also locating the building no closer than the current hospital is located to their sight lines, and also maintaining the trees and the landscape buffer between them that exists today. If you go to the next slide. The site access, just to focus on this for a moment, the main site access would be from Linfield Street with a drop off towards the street and a drive aisle that leads to the covered parking under the buildings, which is highlighted here in pink. The PACE Center would be accessed by residents and participants through the Two Life building, through the covered parking, and would only propose a minimal amount of surface parking spaces for PACE off of Woodland, really to prioritize the open space, which you can see on the next page. So that open space totals to amount about 40,000 square feet of landscaped open area, so about an acre. And that would include landscape areas, walking paths, trails, seating, and an intergenerational area where Two Life residents could gather with their families and where neighbors in the surrounding community could come together in a new shared outdoor amenity. On the next page, you see just a general, on the next page, sorry. There we go. On the next page, you see an early conceptual view of the development from Linfield Street. As I mentioned, this is just an early view, sort of giving the idea of sort of the height and the character. And this is also on the website, so please feel free to you can go and visit. And this is both the site plan and the rendering can be found there. So I will hand it off now back to Dave for further conversation and questions.
Okay, so that pretty much concludes our formal presentation. Now we're going to open it up to questions, comments, and if we have a little technical difficulty because there are so many people on the call, I'm going to leave it to Rose and her staff to either bring up questions that are in chat for us to answer, or if we're going to bring people into the meeting so that they can comment a question on screen. Let's start off. So what are you seeing, Rose?
Hey, I'm not seeing any hands up.
All right, questions in chat?
We got a question in the chat that is, what is the minimum age for the senior housing?
So there's two answers to that question. For the Woodland Village on the back parking lot, the age restriction is age 55. And Elizabeth, correct me if I'm wrong, for the Two Life community, the age restriction is age 62 and over. Is that correct?
That's correct. Rose, somebody direct messaged me a question.
Okay.
I'm happy to ask, which is what services will be offered on site? Are the services for residents and their families only? So Two Life offers a range of services, many of which you saw in the presentation that I provided, but our core services that we have on-site resident service coordinators. They're typically trained social workers that help with care coordination and help make sure that every one of our residents finds their way out of their apartment and into our community programs and services. So those programs and services range from fitness and wellness, social and cultural programs. We have technology programs, arts and culture. And then, of course, we are partnering with Element Care to bring the PACE program on site through an on-site PACE center in the rear of the site. So all of those programs and services are available for our residents. We also, as I mentioned, function as village centers, and we really are arms open to all and really welcome community residents to take part in our programs and services. So we love it when folks come, use our fitness center, join our intergenerational programs, engage in our lifelong learning classes and the like. So is definitely available for all. And maybe Bob can speak a little bit in particular about PACE also, because that is a program that will be available for residents of the building, but also for people who choose in the community to join the PACE program.
Okay,
So
then let's go to Evelyn. Evelyn Marcotte,
Yes, I have a question for Dave.
Sure.
What is going to happen with the brook that runs alongside the parking lot between Dartmouth Street and the parking lot?
So the brook would pretty much stay as it is. It would be a protected wetland.
Oh, good.
I was actually out there earlier today because of the heavy rains, and I spoke to the neighbor that's on the corner there. Last week, I actually had my maintenance guy clear the leaves from the invert there. So to answer your question, nothing's going to happen to the stream. It'll stay exactly as it is. But one thing that we will make sure that we do as part of the project and kind of incorporate into the landscaping is that the landscapers for the project would be responsible for making sure that that culvert at the end of the stream is always kept clear of leaves and debris, so that in a rainstorm such as today, that the water flows into the drain the way it should.
Yes, we have problems when that plugs up, when then our houses flood here.
Yeah, no, the Lynn Water and Sewer kind of, those folks let me know that there's an issue there. And by way of addressing it, we'll be monitoring it and make sure that it stays clear, both between now and through the construction, and then ultimately the homeowners there as part of their landscaping that would be maintained. Okay. See Councilor Lozey on the screen. Maybe Rose, if you could invite Councilor Lozey to speak.
Yes, so Councilor Lozey, I just sent you there. Great.
Okay, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Okay, great. I was having usually I've used the Zoom, and usually there's a raise hand when you tap the screen, but I don't see it. So how is somebody supposed to comment?
I think we've got a few folks raising hands. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, it's not coming up on mine, but anyway, I'm glad I made it through. I hope there's not others that are having that difficulty. I can screenshot it for you and show you, but it's just not giving you that icon usually when you tap it to raise your hand. But anyway, I don't want to belabor this. I have a lot of questions. I want to just say I'm thrilled to see all of this wonderful planning for our elderly in this community. At my urging, Metropolitan Area Council, we did hold those public hearings, and this is what the majority of people wanted to see. So I want to start off with Elizabeth, some questions. Two Life sounds wonderful. I'm curious, how many staff to residents does Two Life usually do at their community housings?
Yeah, that's a great question. So different ratios depending on the types of staff that you're talking about. Our resident service coordinators, which are kind of the heart of the programs and services that we offer, we typically have them at a ratio of about 1 to 80 or 1 to 100 residents. And then each of our communities has, and they have a diverse caseload. So we distribute our residents so that each of our resident service coordinators has some residents that have a higher level of need and need more intensive care. And then that's balanced out with other members of their caseload who really might just need a little bit more prompting around getting involved in book club or something like that. So
that's not too many staff then, 1 per 80 residents.
That's just our resident service coordinators. So those are just our social workers. And then on top of that, we also have a whole host of property operations staff. So each of our communities has what we call an executive director. It's their job to supervise the entire site team, kind of make the whole place hum. They coordinate the team.
And they're located on site?
They are located on site.
Okay, so how many operational staff would there be?
So in a community of about 150 as we're proposing, we have 1 executive director, probably 2 resident service coordinators, probably 2 to 3 people on our maintenance team. We also have typically an assistant director that helps with lease up and compliance. And then one very special thing that we do, and I alluded to it in our presentation, is that we always have 2 apartments that are available for live-in staff so that we have staff on site 24/7, and our overnight staff who are living in apartments on site both respond to maintenance emergencies, but they also are the first responders if someone does pull their pull cord. And so they have the ability to intervene if there's an overnight emergency, and they're able to handle 92% of those pull cords in-house. They never have to call 911. So typically those pull cords go right to the fire station, but those calls come to us instead because we find it's much more effective. And we're able to provide a more appropriate response. It doesn't always require an ambulance. So we're talking about, somewhere in the neighborhood of probably 10 to 13 staff in a
Okay,
building.
thank you.
Size.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Patricia, I have a question regarding the design. We can see the rendering. I also have the website up, and it looks pretty modern. The design kind of sloped towards, I believe, the east. Are there any plans for smart energy designs incorporated into this proposal?
We may, Patricia was having a little bit of internet trouble, so she was going to come back in. She may have gotten kicked
She's
off.
back
Okay,
in.
I can reserve that for later.
She's back in and she's raising her hand. I think you need to unmute her, Rose.
Okay, hang on a second. Okay.
There we go.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the question. I mean, I think we work with Two Life on setting the goals for sustainability and any type of, for some of the other properties that we're working with them, we are exploring passive house, which is sort of another environmental strategy. I mean, one of our tenets as a design firm, though, is to always design with what is contextually appropriate, looking for ways to create safe and healthy housing. So even in response to COVID-19, our team is really an expert in infection control. So also how to create healthy homes that allow for adequate amounts of access to daylight and fresh air, where we can take advantage of natural ventilation where possible, and are always looking for alternative strategies to bolster sort of those more passive strategies where we can't sort of create them entirely passively. So Elizabeth, I don't know if you want to talk about any of the other goals, but I think in general, it's something that we're always looking for.
Well, I think the only other thing that I would say is that because Two Life owns and operates the housing long-term, we're invested in sustainable design practices, both because it's the right thing to do by the environment, but also because it's an efficient way to operate a building. And we're actually proud to share that in all of the communities that we own in the greater Boston area, we are nationally the #1 leader in HUD's Better Building Challenge in reducing our energy consumption. So we've retrofitted all of our existing communities to have a high degree of sustainability. And we certainly make that same investment in any new building that we create.
So if we're okay to move on, we've got a couple of hands raised and then a couple questions that are in the chat.
I'll come back. Go right ahead.
Well, I would say if the counselor has additional questions.
No, I wouldn't mind waiting. I'd like to hear from the community.
Okay.
Yes, I'll come back.
So I will say just before I do the next, get the next raised hand, that if it should be in the participants, if everybody goes down to the bottom of their screen and you click on participants, that should give you the option to raise your hand. And then when you raise your hand, it will pop up and I'll see it and I'll press the unmute button, but then you actually have to click your unmute on your end so that we can hear.
Rose, maybe it's because I'm using an iPad, but there's nothing on the bottom. It's at the top. And then there's icons for mute, unmute, video, screen, and participants, so all those choices, but not raise your hand.
So yeah, and I have to say, Rose, I'm having the same thing on mine, and I don't know why, because I usually have raised hand. So I'm assuming it's working for some because I see some hands, and for some it's not. So my suggestion is if you don't have the raise hand function, use the chat function and just say, I have a question in the chat, and then we will get to you.
Yeah, and that's what I had to do to be recognized. I had to do
Okay.
the chat.
So we're going to go to Pam Edwards. I'm going to unmute you now, Pam.
Hi, I'm the I'm the Director of Organizing for the Mass Senior Action Council. And our members have been looking at this site for quite a while. And I want to thank Laura Gallant for all the work and the research that she did on this. And we truly want to thank Mr. Solimine, because it is because of your investment in Lynn that this is going to be possible for the seniors in our community. And just goes to show that whenever you have a developer that cares about the community, you can really make some great housing. And I can tell you that we have about 270 members in Lynn, and they're very excited and they want me to thank you. Barbara Mann, our former president, is on here today, and I know she's heard from many of our members too. So thank you, and to Life, for having this vision.
Well, and thank you.
Thank you. And actually, Barbara Mann is the next raised hand. So Barbara, we will go to you.
Okay. Oh, I am unmuted. No, I didn't realize Pam was on, but I just wanted to thank them too. I appreciate everything that they're doing here. And this is such a wonderful program. There are so many people now, 55 and older, and even older than that on an average, but they all need a little extra help, and it's wonderful that we'll have it so close. I just had one question. Have there been any financial guidelines that have been discussed yet? I know you were saying that in some, my notes, I know on, I don't know whether it was Woodland, one of them was 62 and the other one was 55. And I just didn't know whether there was a difference on, how they would be handling any guidelines for financial reasons. Or is it just, and I have friends too that are in the PACE program, and that's wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that it's going there too.
So thank you, Barbara. I'll start the answer and then I'll turn it over to Elizabeth. With regard to the Woodland site, that will be over age 55, and those are single-family homes for sale, and those will be at market rate.
Okay.
The main building, the Two Life property, that'll be 150 apartments. And Elizabeth, can you speak to the affordability component and how that would work for folks?
Yeah, Barbara, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
And thanks for the good question. Yeah, so we are 62 and better, we like to call it. And the project is proposed as 100% affordable. And it will have a broad range of affordability, so that we'll have the ability to serve many of the older adults who live in Lynn through a range of different subsidy programs, including some of the apartments, which we hope will have deep operating support, so that people who live with us only pay 30% of their income to live there, and we can work with HUD subsidies to pay the balance of the operating costs. And with those apartments, your income can be as low as, $8,000-$10,000 a year. People who are receiving kind of minimum Social Security, and HUD supports the balance of the rent. And then other of the apartments will have a different kind of subsidy that gives us the flexibility to provide housing for people up to what is 60% of the area median income. That wants a lot more conversation, because how you actually calculate 60% of median income for an older adult is kind of an art, because it has to do with the combination of what your recurring income is, and then if you've been able to save money, how much you've saved and how you draw down on that. So the nice thing about it is it offers affordability to a huge range of people, those who have some assets and those who don't have some assets. So the whole 150 apartments will be affordable with a lot of flexibility within it for different combinations of people's income and assets.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a couple more hands raised, but I'm going to go. We also have questions in the chat, so I'm going to read a couple of the questions from the chat. Derek White asked, do Lynn residents get priority for housing over non-residents?
Elizabeth, do you want to handle that one?
Sure. So we are proposing that 70% of the apartments have a local preference. And that is something that will still need approval from our subsidizing agencies, which will be the City of Lynn and the state of Massachusetts. But a 70% local preference is typical. It's been approved on all of our other projects. And we're happy to, certainly those 70% would have a local preference. Doesn't mean that the remainder of the units wouldn't also go to people in Lynn. But the entirety of the apartments are leased through a lottery system and an application process. And the lottery is structured in a way where those first 70% go to people in the local community.
Okay. Mary Wheeler had a question about sort of income qualifications. Is there an opportunity for elders who are homeless to receive housing? And just wanted to clarify about the $10,000 limit.
It's not a $10,000 limit. I'm really glad you asked that question. I just threw out that number as an example because that is the average income of people who live in our current subsidized apartments. But there are many people who live with us who earn less than $10,000 a year because they're able to benefit from that operating subsidy that I mentioned that we will be applying for and hope to receive for this project. So absolutely, yes, people who are homeless or formerly homeless will be able to live here with that kind of support. And actually through the subsidizing agencies that we work with, typically we pledge between 5 and 10% of the apartments to be set aside for people in a priority system for formerly homeless people.
We have a question from Tom Reddy. Can you tell me what steps you are taking to address the changes to the existing neighborhoods to include traffic, infrastructure, noise, etc.? Dave, do you want to take that?
We'll take the hard one first, I guess. With regard to noise, any construction is noisy, and we do our best to keep it to a minimum, but we would follow the city guidelines in terms of hours of operation and so forth. There will be noise with construction. As far as traffic, the project has been designed to minimize the impact of traffic on the neighborhood. The current hospital or the former hospital, certainly when it was in full operation, had hundreds of car trips a day accessing from Woodland Ave and the side streets off of Woodland Ave into both the back parking lot of the hospital and the further back parking lot off Woodland Ave, where the overflow lot, if you will, where employees as well as some of the folks coming to and from visiting the hospital use back streets. So from a traffic standpoint, what we're proposing is certainly substantially less than the operating hospital was. I hope that answers the question. I think in the proposal that we've come up with really has a minimal impact on the surrounding homes. And that's why we designed in the back a cluster where we maintained the buffer of mature trees to keep the wooded aspect of the property. So I hope that answers the question.
Let's go to Brian Field.
Thank you, Rose. And thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Dave. I just want to acknowledge my colleague on the council, Wayne Losey, for getting the initial funding from partners to begin this discussion of the redevelopment of the hospital. I grew up in the neighborhood, and my parents are still there. And I see a lot of friends and family that are still on the Zoom call right now. One of the discussions that I had, or the questions that I had really during those meetings, was the time frame of the redevelopment. I know we look at hospitals in Stoneham. I drive by the former J.B. Thomas Hospital all the time, and there's still a fence around it for all these years that it sat vacant. And what the redevelopment was. And I know Dave mentioned it earlier of when the hospital was going to be taken down. But what is your time frame as far as the construction being completed on maybe just the first phase and the houses in the back, as far as timing, as when zoning gets approved for this project?
That's a great question, and I'll start with it. Once we're fully permitted on the rear parking lot, my target date would be to start construction by the end of the spring of 2021, meaning about 6 months from now. If the city council approvals as well as the conservation approvals were in place, we'd be able to start construction middle of 2021, and the duration of the construction for the 28 homes would be about 2 years. As far as the front site, the demolition, my hope is that it would be completed by the end of the spring of 2021. Thinking in mind those hospitals that you mentioned that have laid fallow for decades and they're still there as empty buildings. That's something we wanted to avoid here, so we're moving ahead with the demolition work. One of the, as we presented earlier, the south building is going to be repurposed for the use of Element Care. We would hope to start work on that building sometime in the middle of 2021, once design work and so forth is done, with the hope of the south building work being completed by early 2022. My hope, and I was pushing the folks from Two Life Communities to hopefully start construction at some point in 2022. And they are telling me that because of government funding and so forth, it's more likely that construction would start on the actual Two Life Community buildings sometime in 2023, with a construction duration of about 16 months. So hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Julie sent her question in the chat. Linfield Street is already congested. Perhaps the question has been answered, but I was wondering what considerations have been given to the impact of residents going onto Linfield Street from this project.
The impact on Linfield Street, and as Elizabeth mentioned earlier, most of the folks in senior housing tend to be driving off-peak hours. We all know that getting in and off of Linfield Street is difficult at best when there's, especially during rush hour traffic. Somebody suggested to me that, having a traffic light in front of the property there, maybe in conjunction with the new medical building, might be in order. I think that's a more complicated question that requires state involvement, because Linfield Street is a state highway, technically a state highway. And that's something that I certainly would be in favor of, some sort of traffic signal to allow people in and out of the property. But again, that's a bigger question for the city and state officials to look at. But I would be supportive of that, but it wouldn't be our decision to make.
So Dave, I can jump in here too, and I'm enjoying the comment that Pam just made about traffic. So Dave is right. Our residents typically drive in off-peak hours, and a couple of data points that I can share with you, because we have studied traffic on some of our other projects, and we also understand the parking patterns of our current residents. And what I can tell you is in our current communities, typically, less than 20% of our residents request parking stickers, because we do issue permits for people to park in our parking lots. So we do know that our residents typically don't drive a lot. Certainly they have the opportunity to if they want to, but we see a low utilization. And then studying traffic on some other projects we've done recently, we actually just looked at the potential traffic impacts of a 175 unit project that we're working on in another community. And that study determined that at most, those apartments would have a 1% impact on the current traffic. And that would be during our peak time, which is right around noon. During seniors off peak, which is, when commuter traffic is at its peak in the kind of 8 to 9:30 or 4 to 6 range, we have less than a 1% impact on traffic patterns. So we'll have to do more study with this project, but if prior experience rings true here, which I would expect that it would, also because of the location of this community near a bus line, we would expect to see similar low utilization of cars and kind of less traffic than you would experience in more of a family type development of this scale. Kathleen Santora has one, a raised hand, Rose.
Oh, great. Okay.
Hi, thank you very much. I live in the neighborhood also, and I'm very pleased to see that senior housing is going to be developed here. My concern is with the actual build itself. We know there's a lot of building going on in Lynn right now. There's a lot of wage theft happening, and there's a lot of OSHA safety violations happening. And I don't want to see anything like that happen up in this area. I know, Mr. Solimine, you established in this community, and your family's well established in this community, and I wouldn't expect anything like that from you, but I'd like to have some kind of assurances that the people that are actually going to be doing the build are going to be honorable and honest people, and not harm our community by stealing wages from people and revenue that's supposed to go to the city, and provide safe working conditions. Thank you.
Well, speaking from my own experience, I'm primarily a single family home builder. Many of the contractors and subcontractors that I've used are people that I've used for 30 or more years. Some of them live in the neighborhood of the hospital. I would expect that for the construction that I'm managing on the back site, most of the same contractors that I've been using for a number of years would be used there. As far as the front site with the demolition of the hospital, we're meeting with contractors right now looking for recommendations. Most of the demolition contractors are union-based contractors, that follow, union rules. So there's a lot of protection there in terms of the wages of the workers and so forth. And Elizabeth, I think you can, I'll let you speak to the requirements that 2 Life has of its contractors and folks that ultimately would be hired for the construction of the 2 Life buildings.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Very much like Dave talked about, we have strong relationships with several general contractors that have done a lot of work for us over the years. They're all very, they're high performing, qualified contractors. We actually, because our projects receive subsidies from local communities and also from the state, we go through a very careful and engaged and regulated bid process to select a general contractor that's qualified, that has a strong track record, that's committed to the local community and is highly responsive. We have a practice of ongoing engagement with the community, both throughout our planning phase, but also throughout construction. We're committed to pre-construction meetings so that people in the community can meet our contractor, have their contact information. We post weekly updates on our website, what's going on in construction, and our contractors actually reach out to our community partners typically on a weekly basis as a look ahead, so folks understand the work that's coming. So we're committed to working in a very transparent, I think, and respectful way, because we understand that construction does have a huge impact on neighbors, and we want to be as thoughtful and responsive as we can. So we can absolutely commit to that here and look forward to, participation from folks in the city and Lynn and helping us through the process of selecting a contractor and making sure that they uphold the standards that you mentioned.
I can also add from like a positive side of things. From the architectural perspective, we're always looking for ways that the investment in the building can be an investment in the community. So looking for ways that we can specify materials or products that are made locally or regionally to reinforce local economies and communities here is always something that we're looking to do. And even though it's outside of sort of our typical sort of purview, like we also look for ways that, we can partner to create additional opportunities for training or embedding artwork that's made locally into the projects. So unclear at this early phase what exactly those are in this project, but a commitment that we will be looking for them and working with the community to define what's important and what's available.
Okay.
We have one more hand raised, and then also
more chats.
And Bob Mazzoni actually sent me a direct message as well, which I'm happy to answer that question, which is what consideration is being made to utilize newer green technologies on this building. Such an investment, he says, and we absolutely agree, would save considerable amount of operating income through the project. So thank you for that question. And hello, Bob, an old friend who I haven't talked to for a while. So really happy to see your name here. Two Life is extremely committed to green design, green building systems. We follow several standards. We design and develop through the LEED program and typically strive for a LEED Gold standard. We don't always certify the building, but we always design and build to a LEED standard. And then we also participate in the Enterprise Green Communities program, both of which address the core building systems, a tight envelope, really efficient windows, thoughtful HVAC systems, really looking at air circulation, as Patricia mentioned, to both maximize sustainability and support a healthy building. And then in addition to that, we sort of look for the icing also. So things like where possible, we always take advantage of solar, both, certainly solar heat and increasingly solar hot water. And as Patricia mentioned, on one of our other projects, the J.J. Carroll project that I showed you, that's going to be our first passive house community. So we will also explore the possibility of this community being passive house. It's something that each building is somewhat different, but we are committed to the greatest extent possible, including a number of sustainable elements in all of our buildings, both because it's the right thing for the environment and it is also smart operations.
And I'll just add, I think that commitment to sustainability is shown also in, the team's sort of approach in looking to reuse the south building rather than demolish it and just rebuild new. We believe that's the most sustainable building is the one that already exists, and it's in a great site and a great shape, and we saw no reason to not reuse it. So are excited to commit that as well as hopefully part of the sustainability approach.
Okay, we have a hand, Ronald Prioli.
Got it down here. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you, Ron.
Okay. Living on Regina Road, we have, all of us here have the luxury of the only working traffic light on Linfield Street in this area. What are your plans? This street is overwhelmed because of the school. Now, if you've done your studies in the past year, thanks to the virus, the street doesn't look that bad. But at the height of it, at pickup and drop-off times, there will be 8 school buses on this street. You have teachers and you have other staff at the school parked up and down the entire street, and you can barely get one car in one direction. And I brought this up before at the other meetings, and nobody seems to care. And frankly, I don't want to hear stories about 1% or this or that. You're building 28 single-family homes. Now, my way of reckoning, I don't have the expertise that you people do, but I'm looking at probably 40, 50 cars more in this area. Catching the light, because you can go do your studies in your other areas, but there's a limited number of streets from the hospital to here that are accessible to Linfield Street. And if you come here at even off prime times, I've seen Saturday coming home, I was at the Rotary, stopped at the Rotary on Linfield Street to get on the street. And now you're talking about, you say, well, it's only 20% of our people apply for parking stickers. That's fine. So you're talking 175. So let's just say 30 to 40 more cars there. Okay. And then you're going to deal with, that's off time. But what about people coming to visit those people, friends, relatives? They're not going to walk or take a bike. I want to know what's going to be done.
Ron, let me start to answer your questions, because I'm one of those guys that drives by your house all the time.
I know. Everybody up there, all that area up there. This is the easy path to take a left onto Linfield Street.
You're absolutely correct. But let me answer your question. One of the things that we did, and because I'm very aware of the fact of all the traffic that happens on Woodland Ave and Clearview and down to Regina, I'm very aware of that. That's why when we designed this project, the major part of the project does not access Woodland Ave. It accesses directly out to Linfield Street.
Dave, excuse me for interrupting. You interrupted me, but with all due respect to you, you know as well as I do, when the hospital was there, the employees were told not to come out the back way. And they did, because as a matter of convenience, if you got to take a left to get out of here, you're going to come down here and grab this only light, and you know it. Please. I live here. I see it. I've seen it for the 38 years that I've lived here. The people that work there and would come out of the back street, come down and go down Clearview, come down our street, catch the light. The street would be backed up all the way. Please, you know that, and everyone knows it. What are you people going to do about it? I see 2 councilors there. I know somebody made a comment. Well, that's up to the state and the city officials. Let's wash your hands of this issue. But
Sure.
You know what?
Let me know when you're done.
We have 2 councilors there. I want to hear what is going to happen here. It's wonderful. You got a great project going. It's going to be very convenient. It's going to be very safe and secure for the people that have it. And you're going to have, all the latest in the heating and the green technology and all that. But what does that do for me and the rest of the people on Regina Road?
Are you ready for me to answer your question?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so the major part of our proposal, the 150 units that 2 Life is going to build, the only access for parking and to get to that building will be from Linfield Street. You can't leave that building and go out the back. It's not going to be set up that way. So the only way for all of that traffic that exists for those 150 units will be from Linfield Street. They will not be in the back streets. But I will agree with you, there are 28 new homes that if folks are leaving there and they're going to take a left on Linfield Street, they're apt to come down your street. I will agree with you with that. If they're going to take a right on Linfield Street, they're more likely to take a right on Woodland and go down Anchor
Absolutely.
Road. So,
Absolutely.
you are partially correct. Some of the traffic will go down Regina Road. It's certainly a lot less than when the hospital existed. So why don't we move to the next question?
Okay. There's a question in the chat from Pat and John Riley. Will there be blasting in the back lot?
We don't know yet because we haven't dug back there, but pretty much every project I've done in the last 20 years required a certain amount of blasting. That being said, blasting is highly regulated. Any homes within close proximity to where we're blasting would need to be surveyed by a third-party survey company. That's regulated by the Lynn Fire Department as well as the State Fire Marshal. I found blasting to be very safe if done correctly, and it's so highly regulated that it will be done correctly if needed on the back lot. The other requirement that Lynn has is that anytime there's blasting, there's a trained firefighter that we have to hire through the city to monitor the blasting. There are seismographs set up. There are two things with regard to blasting that are concerned. One is vibration and the other is fly rock. And generally fly rock is taken care of by heavily matting over blasting, and vibration is highly monitored by the fire department. So the shorter answer is there's likely to be a small amount of blasting. We won't know until we actually dig in the rear of the lot.
Okay, and then Stephen Upton asked if someone could not make this meeting, where can the recording be accessed?
So they could reach out directly to us, either to Rose or to me. We'll have it in some format. We've been asked by the local cable TV folks to provide it for them for the community access cable show.
Okay, and then we have one more chat, and then I know there's another raised hand, but Tom Reddy asked, is it common in new construction for there to be an increase in rodent activity once the ground is disturbed? Do you have a plan for the existing neighbors to address this?
It's not common, but it does happen, especially in a wooded area. And yes, when there's demolition, so for the hospital site itself, with demolition, we're required to have a pest control company come through the property. I can tell you, I've been through the hospital a number of times. I've seen absolutely no evidence of any kind of rodents. So the hospital was pretty well maintained for obvious reasons. But any wooded area, we could disrupt rodents. And the way to handle that is to bait with traps. And any construction project that we've done, if it's an issue, then we will bait around the property and hire the proper pest control folks.
Okay, and then we have Debbie Luciano has a raised hand. So Debbie, yes.
Yes, we can.
Oh,
hear
good.
you.
It wouldn't let me unmute. So my actual question was again about the critter situation, the rodents, because with the construction of the hospital, we actually had rodents that made their way across the street and had to get pest control out and bait and outside and stuff because we found holes, which scared the bejesus out of me. So I'm actually anticipating it to continue with the knockdown of the hospital in the back. And I'm just wondering, how often do they bait those traps that are around the hospital that I know when they knocked down and made the urgent care, they had traps out there, but how often are they baiting them?
I can't speak to the, the current construction that the hospital did. Are you saying that the new medical building and when they demolished those two smaller buildings, you had a problem then, like last year?
Yeah, like earlier. Yeah.
Okay. I would say whatever's necessary. I can tell you, I live, I back up to Lynn Woods, and I get mice trying to come in my garage every year, and there's real, they come from the woods.
Yeah.
So, I've got traps inside my garage, and I usually catch a few mice this time of year. So, they do exist. I can tell you that while we have construction activity, once we start construction activity, then we certainly will bring in the pest control folks and follow their recommendations. And if it's a problem, please reach out to us and we'll address it right away.
You hear me?
We can hear you, Wayne.
Okay, Dave, that was a great question by Deb Luciano. As a counselor, as Ward 1 counselor, I was contacted numerous occasions when they were tearing down the portion of the medical center, caused a lot of rodents in the neighborhoods. I contacted partners at the time, and they had the exterminators bait the boxes and check them on a weekly basis. But I think originally the first month or so, it kind of got ahead of them. So I would request Two Life or whoever is going to be in charge of the demolition that they stay right on top of that and be very proactive, that just the old medical building, when that was torn down, caused a massive rat problem in and around that neighborhood. Caused problems on Anchor Road, Woodland, Linfield Street. And when that building gets demolished, it's going to be a problem. Now, enough on that. I want to move on. I really love what's happening here. Elizabeth, if you're still on there, I have a few questions for you.
I'm still here.
Okay, how you doing?
Good.
Good. Question regarding the, you mentioned how the Weinberg House and the Brown House 61, 62 apartments, they were designed with the residential homes in the area that they were no more than 3-story. First of all, how many story is this proposed building going to be?
Hi, this is Patricia. I'll answer that if that's okay. The
Okay.
front building off of Linfield Street is a G+4, which is sort of a ground floor with 4 stories of residential above it, as well as the building between the North Shore Medical Center, or sort of along the North Shore Medical Center sort of site of the site. Along Dartmouth, the building or the development drops down a level, so then it is ground floor +3, as is the future development that is also adjacent sort of to the back of the site, right there in that dashed line, sort of our area of potential space.
It's basically 5 stories, is that correct,
Yeah,
Patricia?
yeah. About 5, and then it drops down to 4.
Okay, and the renderings that I'm looking at, these are proposed, is that correct?
Yeah, these are really early conceptual drawings just to, again, start the process of zoning. So really where we're talking about
The drawing above, not the conceptual.
Oh, sorry.
The plan.
Yes, the plan.
Right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go back a couple more rows, there's
No,
the
right
cleaner
there.
ones. Okay. I'm just saying the cleaner version is easier to read.
The first one?
The first one,
Well-
yeah. There you go.
Okay, so now what's phase 1?
Phase 1 is everything here that's colored in white. So building A, building B, building C, and the existing south building would be considered phase 1. That's going forward in this zoning process.
And where would phase 2 be?
That dashed line right there that the
Okay.
arrow is outlining is the site of phase 2, which would be the future development at some later date.
Well, let me ask you this now. Who can answer this? I don't know if you can do it, Patricia or Elizabeth, but how do you determine densities? For example, when I mentioned the Weinberg, the Brown, the Golder was designed so that the height was to the existing residential neighborhood. This isn't like the J.J. Carroll site in Brighton, where you have more urban area surrounding it. This is residential. So how is it determined? My concern is just density, overall density, 155 with 55 more and lot coverage quite a bit. I'm just concerned overall with density. And that goes hand in hand with earlier concerns about traffic and just overall quality of life for the surrounding neighborhoods.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Lozey. It's a great question, and I appreciate that you sort of took it to the level of, what are the aspects of density that we need to pay attention to and that we need to be responsive to. And certainly, it's all the things that you mentioned and really looking for the right combination of a size of a project and a design of a project that really fits on a site and is really respectful of the community that we're locating in. And in some ways, in this case, takes its cues from the building that's there now and really looking at proposing something that's going to, when it's done, feel pretty similar to the kind of mass that's on the site right now in terms of the look of the building. So there's the look of the building and how it fits. That's one aspect of density. And then, as you mentioned, another is green space. And we're actually seeking to expand, and I think we're accomplishing that here, green space, because we're taking all that parking that's on the surface right now and putting it underneath the building in order to really activate a lot of the site for, much more active and usable and really, we hope, beautiful green space that'll be accessible to our residents and also hopefully a nice amenity to people in the community as well to come and enjoy that green space. And then we certainly also think about traffic impacts and our ability to handle the parking needs of the site. And, in this case, we're really pleased that we can put that parking, the vast majority of it, underground so that you don't see it. And to really think about, given our population and the kind of traffic patterns that our population will generate, being respectful of integrating into the current traffic patterns. So we definitely thought about that. And then another element of it, which, we can't ignore, is feasibility. And to make a project work and to really achieve the mission and the vision of a project, you need to also build at a scale that can support the cost of the project and support both the cost of development and also the cost of operations. So thinking about, taking on the responsibility of the remediation and demolition of the hospital building and what that will require, and then the other costs that are associated with the project, all of those elements kind of added up to about 150 apartments. And we were also really pleased that that number was within the range that was also talked about in the MAPC study that looked at, between 100 and 150 apartments. The vision for the second phase is a vision at this point, and the way that we plan to proceed in terms of the zoning for this project is to have the project zoned for that 150 with the opportunity through a special permit process to bring in those additional 55 units at a later date. And at that point, only after which we've all had a chance to evaluate whether the first phase of the project is successful and has had the kind of impacts that we intend for it to have, both on the surrounding community and for our residents as well. So we wouldn't propose to bring those additional 55 units until everybody could live with this project for a while and make sure that it's successful.
Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Patricia. Dave.
Here.
The Woodland site plan. I'm calling it up on my computer. Now, you mentioned how it's a lot like Apple Blossom and Cherry Tree, Peach Tree Lane. What is the actual footprint of the square footage? Now, the configuration that I'm looking at of your cluster design of Woodland.
We're getting back there.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
it's this advancing, it's slow because of the photos. It's working, just slowly.
Well,
We don't mind if you can look at our
I'll continue,
beautiful
Dave,
residents
with
a
the
little bit
question
longer.
until it comes up. So it just, again, my concern is density. And it looks like it's a lot more dense than Apple Blossom, Cherry Tree, and Peach Tree. And that's my concern. And I think if there's room to look at alternatives with less density, I think I'd like to see that. And
So,
yep, go ahead, Dave.
well, the site plan's in front of you. So basically, the density number of units per acre is pretty much the same as Nell's Pond. Nell's Pond is 10 acres of land that has 30 units. This is 9.5 acres of land with 28 units. Now, Nell's Pond is actually a little bit more spread out than what we've done. We've clustered a little tighter together, so there is tighter density, if you will, but with the tighter density leaves more open space, so that there's more open space with Woodland Village.
But if I could, Dave, it's not by choice. It's because you have wetlands and you can't build in those wetland areas. So I think I'm sorry, but in my opinion, it just seems to be cramming in more, and it just doesn't look anything like up there. And I think it's a bit too dense.
The project at Nell's Pond is obviously configured differently because it's just the way it is. There's multiple access points. But I take your comments into consideration.
Okay. Other than that, I'm very pleased with what I'm seeing. And really, overall, my number one concern, I know Elizabeth mentioned, sustainability or feasibility for making this happen. It's just overall, I'm a real kind of a density issue person. I'm concerned that sometimes projects are just piled in, and I think it's a bit heavy on that, and I wish there were alternatives that would allow us to see something, maybe downsizing a bit. So that would be my only comment. And otherwise, thank you all for putting this on, and I look forward to this being recorded and available further for the community. Dave, thank you for that card that you sent out. I think you said you sent out 600 of them.
That's correct. I think it was 627.
And that was good. They were well done, and I have it here in front of me. And so I hope people have taken advantage and that that they're on tonight. And if not, that they'll be able to see a recording of this.
It sounds good. Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you.
Rose, just double checking if anybody else has a question. If not, I think we'll sign off for the evening. Just
I don't
double
see,
check. Technology
I don't see any other raised hands or chat messages.
So for anybody that's still on the call, if you do have questions that come up later, please reach out. You have the website, you have a couple of my emails, you have Rose's email. Please reach out if you have any further questions or comments, but thank you all for participating tonight. And this was an interesting exercise. Thank you to the folks at 2 Life that handled the technology, because I'm one of those folks. I had to have my wife set up the computer for me. So the technology is challenging for me as well. So thank you all. And I guess we'll all sign off. All right. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Right.
Good night.